cross, I found my light. With Jesus by my side, I conquer every fight. Walking in faith, I won't be afraid. His love surrounds me, my fears will fade. Hope is my anchor, love is my guide. With Jesus I'll overcome, I'll never hide. A warrior of strength, in His name I rise. In a world of chaos, His love never dies.
She's an award-winning author, speaker, owner of GodlyGranny.com, and podcast host, sharing the truth with you. This is The Michelle Moore Show.
Hi, everybody. So glad that you're with us today. Yesterday, I had mentioned that actress, singer, foster care advocate, you name it. She's very gifted, very talented. Jen Lilley will be here today. She's going to be filling us in on all things foster care system. I'll tell you what, just when you think it couldn't get any worse, she comes out with more horrible stuff. And so the facts are sobering for sure. So I'm very, very excited to have her here today to be sharing what's going on in the American foster care system. I do want to let you know, of course, today's Tuesday. So Wednesday and Thursday, we do documentaries or an educational video. Producer Ron already has everything set to go for us. The first one is the Above Majestic Implications of a Secret Space Program. And of course, he knew we were going to have Jen Lilley here today and talking about the foster care system. You won't believe Thursday's video. So Thursday is actually a historical documentary. It's called The Orphan Trains Placing Out in America. This was actually done in 2007. Listen to this. The description for it is this educational film examines this period of mass relocation of children in the United States, widely recognized as the beginning of documented foster care in America in this historical documentary. It combines archival material and interviews with actual orphan train riders, rider descendants, and historical consultants. I think this is going to be a must-see, especially after today's show with Jen. So not familiar with Jen Lilley, let me tell you. Oh, and by the way, I do want to remind you today is the last day of the new release sale for the new releases for Godly Granny. It's 5% off. So I wanted to remind you about that. Okay. So tonight's at 11:59 p.m. Okay. So let's talk about Jen Lilley. She's got quite the resume. I want to read this to you. So she's an actress, a singer, an author, and a foster care advocate. I have to say, everything I have heard and seen, she is quite passionate about it. And I have a real appreciation for that. I think we lack a lot of passion in this country. And so that's why I'm always saying, get off the fluoride. But she is a foster care advocate, best known for her roles on Days of Our Lives, General Hospital, and numerous Hallmark Channel films. Alongside with her husband, Jen has dedicated much of her life to serving vulnerable children through foster care and adoption, fostering multiple children, and adopting through the foster system. Drawing from her firsthand experience, she has become a passionate advocate for foster care awareness, family support, and child welfare reform. In 2026, so earlier this year, she co-authored Called to Foster, an honest guide to getting started. And that was with Dr. DeGarmo and DeGarmo there. Thank you, producer Ron, for showing the two of them together. And so it's a practical resource designed to help families navigate the foster care journey and better understand the needs of children in care. And so there's so much to talk about with this. Let's have Jen come on in, and producer Ron, thank you so much. And let's welcome Jen. Hi, Jen.
Thank you. Hi, thank you so much for having me on your show.
Oh, I'm glad you're here today. Okay, so the first thing I want to say is I've listened to an interview you did with Sean Ryan that was 3 hours long. And there's a lot of, I loved it because it was so thorough. Because I'm like, okay, well, what's your background? Were you in the foster care system? And so you explain about your father was a judge, your mom worked at a crisis pregnancy center. And so through all of their work, you grew up in a home that sometimes would have somebody that was in the foster care system in the home with you. And so can you explain a little bit about that?
So the people who would live with us were not officially part of the foster care system. They
Okay.
were someone who was at risk, someone who needed help, was going through a hard transition in life. And so that just introduced me to the concept of having somebody live with my family who wasn't necessarily part of my family. I think it was sort of basically like the idea of the church stepping in before the government does. So they were not part of the system, but I don't know. Like that's it. Just hopefully that answers your question. I don't know. I
Yeah,
can keep
yeah, that's
going.
great. That's
Okay.
great. I think it was interesting though that it gave you that kind of early exposure though, to being around people that aren't necessarily quote unquote blood. And also, I
Right.
thought it was interesting because, from the outside looking in, it gives you exposure to the fact that you might have two parents that are together and you have this great home and, these great parents, but not everybody else does. A lot of times
Yeah.
we know what we know, right? Okay, so how was it then that you ended up really getting involved with foster care specifically?
Um, okay. So because I had those seeds of empathy, I was at least slightly aware of foster care. I mean, I understood I okay, so 51% of surveyed Americans wrongfully think that kids in foster care are bad kids. That's like probably the number one myth and misconception. The truth is they're not bad kids. They might have a lot of trauma. They might have a lot of issues. They might act out and be more troubled and harder to discipline and things like that. That is true. But that's because of the trauma and abuse that they've sustained because of somebody else. It's not the child's fault that they were put into the system. And so I already knew that, but my husband didn't, which is fine. I think he grew up and knowing kids who might have been in the system. And because they were kids who acted out, he always thought it was the kid's fault. So that's a really common misconception. And basically, I mean, we could stay here for hours and hours, but I will
I
not.
know.
So I'll go ahead and say that because I'm also a believer. When I booked General Hospital and The Artist in 2011, I love the Lord and the Bible. I'm a big, firm lover and believer of everything that the Bible says. And, one of the things that it says is that my sheep will know my voice. So I fully believe that God still moves today. I believe that he still talks today. I've always heard Holy Spirit. I'm really grateful for that. I think that's a real thing. I've witnessed
Yes.
miracles in my own life. Like I've seen cancer disappear for real. I mean, I've seen
Yeah.
so many things on the spiritual realm that we could talk about as a totally different podcast. So I'm really into the Lord. And I was praying one day in my home office in 2011 because I had booked General Hospital. I had booked The Artist, which was a film people probably forgot now. It was like a critically acclaimed film, but it's not like a movie anybody just wants to watch. It was a silent film in 2011 that was nominated for 10 Academy Awards, and it ended up winning 5, including Best Picture. So I was one of the core cast. And because of that, it was like the first time in my career where I actually needed a publicist. And so I was in my office and I was praying and I was like, Lord, man, I really believe that when you have a platform, with that comes a lot of responsibility. Like I didn't get into acting to be famous. I got into acting to be a light and to, really just do the Lord's work. This was something the Lord called me into. So I was praying, like, what do you want me to talk about, Lord? And at the time I was talking about the world water crisis, which is a big deal. It's the fact that in any given day in the world, there are more people that die every year than war, AIDS, malaria combined. So it's a really easy thing to talk about because there's unclean drinking water, you can dig wells, and then there's clean drinking water, and like it's a wonderful thing. It's a very easy subject, right? Because there's a problem and there's an easy solution. The problem with that, talking about it, is that it already has a lot of sunlight, meaning there's already a lot of celebrities that talk about it. They dedicate their birthday to it. It's a very easy charity to support. It's even a very easy cause to get around. And so I remember I was praying and I heard Holy Spirit just very clearly say to me, this is great that you want to talk about that, but a lot of people already talk about that. I need you to actually talk about something that's going on in your own backyard. And I was like, what's going on in my backyard, Lord? So somehow, I'm going to assume by the leading of the Holy Spirit, I was on charitynavigator.org. Amazing, amazing website that verifies nonprofits. I highly recommend it to people. There's a lot of bad nonprofits. And I discovered what people now call child sexually explicit material, which that's a fancy and politically correct way of saying child pornography. And I found out that the average victim, child victim, was under the age of 5. And I just remember sitting in my office just like weeping like for hours, because I was like, how can this be true? Like, how can the United States be the #1 producer and consumer of this content? And so I started talking about that. And I always laugh because it's like so funny post 2020. But my publicist at the time was like, you cannot talk about that in Hollywood. And I was like, why? You know, I just didn't understand. I thought, wouldn't people like want to know this? Wouldn't like most people, regardless of their faith, they don't even have to love Jesus to believe that children shouldn't be, you know, sexually exploited. And you don't have to be a Christian. They don't have to be anything. Like, they're just a human. Most people would agree that this form of child abuse is way not okay. And so I started talking about it, promptly fired that publicist. And then I came across an organization called Child Help. Child Help is incredible. They've been around over 60 years. They're the reason we have the 1-800 for a child abuse hotline. They do a lot of prevention. They're the reason April is National Child Abuse Awareness Month. I mean, these women are incredible. The 2 founders, they've been around 60 years, and they've rescued almost 14 million U.S. children. So I had been talking about foster care with my husband, and he still was like, I don't want to do that. Like, that's a crazy thing to do. Why would we do that? And so I was like, all right, I'm going to get involved another way. I became a mentor through Child Help's program called Special Friends. It's kind of like Big Brothers, Big Sisters. And we fell in love with one of our mentees in particular. Her name's Lariah, and I'm still in touch with her. And she's actually coming to visit me at the end of the month, which is so exciting because like we just got reunited this year in person for the first time in, 8 years or so. But she was facing reunification with her mom. And I'll back up a little bit because I think it's easy. Like, it's like when people are like, don't speak Christianese. You're like, I forget that these are terms that are second nature to me. So let me back up. The goal of foster care is called reunification. That's a fancy way of saying to reunite the child with the family that they have been removed from. So that is always the goal. You can get into foster care in order to adopt. That's a totally different thing. The same licensing process, but that is because about 100,000 children in the United States right now are eligible for adoption through foster care. They've already gone through the process. They have been what's called emancipated, which is like a really ugly term, but they are legally cleared for adoption. And you can sign up to adopt through foster care. It's actually free. That's another myth and misconception. Those children also come with benefits. They come with health insurance. They come with therapy. They come with all sorts of stuff. I'm not sure if that's in every state and every county, but I definitely know it's free. And I think in most cases, in all 50 states, it also comes with a monthly stipend. So there's really no reason people shouldn't adopt through foster care. However, that's not the goal of foster care. So the goal of foster care initially is that child would be reunited with their biological parent. That's the goal. And so that's the goal that you are supposed to be pro as a foster parent. Now, I'm not going to lie, it's really hard. It's hard to remain unbiased, especially when you see bad behavior from the biological parent, or you see patterns that are going to be really harmful to the child. That's difficult. I talk about it way more in depth in my book. But I personally believe, and I think most people would probably agree with me if they knew the full extent, that children who live in a child help village, they have villages, one was in California, one is still in Virginia, they might also have one in Tennessee. If a child lives at a child help village, unless that child is so troubled that the mom or dad, him or herself, relinquish the child to get that level of therapy, which happens, but it's rare. That's not normally why a child ends up at child help. That the children end up at child help because they've gone through so much abuse and trauma that they can't function in a normal foster home. They can't actually even function in a therapeutic group home. They need full-time psychiatric care, every form of therapy, 24/7, 365, or as long as they can be in their facility. So these are extreme cases of abuse. By the way, most children who end up in foster care, it's not actually because of abuse, it's because of neglect. which can look like not being bathed, not being fed, things like that, which are serious and they kind of are abusive, but they're not always willful abuse. So I want to be really clear about that too. However, if a child ends up at Child Helps Village, most of the time, that child, in my opinion, their parents should not be eligible to get that child back, because the level of abuse that child has sustained is things that will make the hair on the back of your neck stand. It's really hard
a whole
to
nother level.
unless you believe in the spiritual war that is real, that is going on, unless you actually believe in demons, you can't comprehend it. And that is the only way you can comprehend it, because it is straight up demonic. And if you study, if you study the cases and you're like, how can one parent think of doing that to a child? You realize like there's a demonic thread. I mean, it's a very strange, very unusual forms of child abuse that are consistent. It's crazy. So anyway, this child was eligible to reunite with her mom, and that was a very, very bad idea. And so when she started talking to us about it, it was enough for my husband to be like, let's become foster parents. So we got rapid license. We did like the fastest track we could possibly do. And then we tried to get her to be placed with us, but there were other reasons that I talk about in the book, or she wasn't placed with us. It was the main underlying reason was that she's African-American and we're white, which I understand the logic of that. I understand culturally, like I'm very for, let's give cultural exposure and things like that. But she was not a child that was going to be placed in anybody's home. She needed a lot of attention. So it was a ridiculous reason to not qualify us to be her foster parents. But anyway, I will say that knew what he was doing, because she ended up reuniting with her grandmother, which was like best case scenario, did a phenomenal job with her. And I know that the Lord knew like she needed her grandmother. She didn't need me. I would not have been able to make her the amazing young woman she is today. So God knows what he's doing.
He took care of it. He took care of it.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about some of the things that, that you've been sharing. And like I said, I listened to your interview with John Ryan, and there were some things that stood out to me. So you said foster care, there is about 40% of the foster care system that's a hellhole. So that's
a Jen Lilley. That's I was very clear on the show. That is my opinion. So that's not based on the study. And I like very much clarified that on the show. He said, what percentage of foster parents do you think are good? And I said, well, I don't have any study to go off of. I have experience, a lot of experience, and a lot of exposure to different foster parents and different organizations. So this is like 100% a Jen Lilley opinion that is based on nothing but experience. So it's not solid.
Yeah, your experiences of people that you've met.
It's my conjecture. I want to be super clear with that.
Sure.
But anything that I did quote as a study is like a real study I could back up.
Sure.
But I would say, I'm just guesstimating that I would say, about maybe 30% of foster homes are awesome. They're like mine. They're, I'm not a licensed therapeutic foster home, but I would like to be, like I have extra level of licensing. If I get licensed again, I might go therapeutic once my kids are older. That's a totally different category.
Sure.
But I would just say I'd say about 30% are foster homes that are really good. They're good people who get involved for the sake of the children. They are straight up, whether they're believers or not, they are dying to themselves. They are in it for the benefit of the child and the benefit of that child's family. Then I'd say about 30% are just okay. Like they're not maybe abusing the child, but they're just
kind of
bare
there.
minimum. It's like, the kid has a bed. The kid has a bed and joins us for dinner, but they're not great. And then I would probably say that 40%, so that makes 100. I would say 40% at least are hellholes. And by that, I mean, like they're fostering in order to traffic. They're fostering to abuse. They are abusive. They are the kind of foster parents that make sure that foster child knows that they are a foster child. They're not part of their family. They're not eating with the family. They're not going on any vacations with them. And I don't mean to say like you have to take your child who's in foster care on vacations with you. I want to be clear about that too. Sometimes you can't. I'm just saying they specifically single out that child. A lot of them are raping the children, molesting the children, trafficking the children. It's they literally, or a huge thing that's common in foster care, hugely common, is it's a different form of trafficking. It's like labor trafficking. It's basically like they foster the kid for a maid. Like they're like,
Wow.
oh, we want this child to clean our house. So this is like, we'll get paid to have a child to, yeah, that's common.
Okay. Okay. Or I guess if they have a business and, they could use the child to work that business or something.
I guess I haven't
Wow.
heard of that, but I mean, it's not like I'm not just like trying to go down rabbit
Yeah,
hole.
nothing,
Dr.
I guess.
DeGarmo could tell you, because he's
seems
an
crazy.
expert witness. My co-author, that's what he does
Yeah.
full time. I mean, me, I'm an actress who found out about something, who has real life experience, fostered and adopted myself. And I mean,
Yeah.
so I know a lot of it, and I'm on the boards of different organizations, but I'm not like living it like Dr. John
Is doing. Okay. Okay. So one of the things that shocked me that you got into in the interview was you started explaining that like a parent could put their child up for adoption, and really transfer the parental rights to someone else who's looking to adopt that child, maybe marry that underage child, kind of go into that. And that was a whole area that I had never heard of, and thought that, wow, that one really kind of got me by surprise.
It got me by surprise as well. So I'll be super very clear about this, because I actually had I was reading all the comments, and there was a guy that was like an attorney allegedly, and I was like, well, if you're an attorney, then you should be very careful to listen to my exact wording, because
You sure?
like I didn't go to law school, but that was something that I would have wanted to do. Like, I'm very specific in my wording. He was like, thought that I said that trafficking wasn't illegal. I was like, play the tape back, sir. That's not what I said. I said there's a loophole. So let me explain this.
That's right. You
just
did.
for all the listeners. I'll try to start from ground one. Trafficking is illegal in the United States. However, most laws have what people call a loophole, right? So that is a loop that people can get through legally, because all law is really, unless it's like a crime that can be very well defined, not every law is black and white. There are things where in law it's open to interpretation. That is why you need to have a good attorney. So trafficking, yes, is illegal in our country. And I don't know all about the trafficking laws. Here's what I know about the loophole that traffickers are using. Currently, on a federal level, as well as all 50 states. So, and I don't mean to people call it mansplaining. It's like, I don't mean to mansplain it, but I will break it down even more simple. Give everybody a little review on civics. Let's go back to school for a second. So we have a federal government, and we also have state governments. All 50 states have their own rules. And that's what makes things complicated. And however people feel about that is their own political beliefs. But that's just how the U.S. was set up. Okay, so there is no federal law, nor is there any state law in any of the 50 nifty that makes it a crime to adopt a child out of foster care for the explicit intent of trafficking. Now, what this lawyer did not understand until I explained it to him, if that person who adopts the child, I call them trafficker A in my analogy, if trafficker A adopts that child and then traffics that child, yes, trafficker A has now violated a law where he or she could be prosecuted if they so are. However, to adopt a child with the intent of trafficking them, not prosecutable. That in and of itself is not a prosecutable crime right now. And the Congress knows about that. Mm-hmm. So what traffickers are already doing is they will adopt a child out of foster care. This is extremely common, for the intent of trafficking them. When anyone adopts a child out of foster care, myself included, I did this. My two boys are my children. They have all the same rights as my two biological children. when my husband and I pass, they will have an equal say in the inheritance. They have all the rights that a biological child has. I also now have parental rights. So trafficker A becomes the legal parent of that child. States, it's generally the age of consent is 18. In some states, it's 17. It might even be 16 in some states. I'm not up on all state laws with this, but there's an age of consent in all 50 states. Before the age of consent, that child is considered a minor, and who only their parents can sign away on their behalf, right? We know this when we go to a doctor. It's like, I'm signing on behalf of my child that, yes, they can have surgery because I have the parental right to sign that. That's my job as a parent until they are not a minor anymore. So trafficker A becomes the legal parent of this child and fully intends to traffic them. What they then do, because it's not prosecutable, it's not a changing, it's the changing of hands is not prosecutable, because that's the loophole. They can then pass off that child to trafficker B. Trafficker B can be prosecuted if that trafficker goes and traffics the child. Like, that trafficker could be prosecuted. The trafficker A can get off free. So trafficker A can sign away the child to trafficker B and say, hey, I have a 6-year-old and I'm their parent, and I decide that my like trafficking buddy Joe Schmo can adopt my 6-year-old. I'll sign away my 6-year-old's rights. The 6-year-old is never, like, obviously they're not part of this. They're not, their opinion is not asked. They're not part of the change. They have no legal say. The parent signs them away, and trafficker B, Joe Schmo, can pay trafficker A a dowry. They can pay the parent money, a bridal fee, or whatever it's called for boys, a dowry. Like, that money is not dirty money. That is not money that is prosecutable. That is not proof of trafficking, because the parent could say, oh, I didn't know Joe Schmo was a trafficker. This is happening all the time, the changeover of hands. Now, trafficker B, if trafficker B does not traffic that child to another person, if they don't take that child and traffic them to another person, they're also protected. Trafficker B can be in his or her own lane, because let me think about this statistic again, because I had it really fresh on the show. Okay. In 33 states, it's like, okay, in 33 states, I don't remember the full statistic because I'm on the show live with you. But here's what I know. There's 33 states, there's 19, and there's 14, because 19 plus 14 makes 33. We'll have to look up what the actual statistic is. Here's what I know. In 50 states, trafficker A is off the hook. In 33 states, oh, I know what it is. In 33 states, trafficker B can marry a minor. That's legal in 33 states. Like, in 19 of those states, if trafficker B is essentially raping a 6-year-old, but they have a marriage certificate, in 19 of those states, they can say, it's not statutory rape. This person's my spouse. They're covered. They're legally covered. In the remaining 14, and I might be flip-flopping this, but I don't think I am. In the remaining 14 of those 33 states where it's legal to marry a minor with a parent's consent, they can't necessarily consummate the marriage with a minor. But if they do, because there's a marriage certificate, it then goes into that weird realm where they may or may not, depending on a judge's interpretation and the lawyer that they hire, they may or may not have like a get out of jail free card. So in 19 states, a marriage license is almost like a get out of jail free card. So trafficker B can just be having their way with a 6-year-old, and they're protected. Now, if they traffic that child to a third party, trafficker C, then that's when trafficking becomes illegal and it becomes a whole thing. But this is a loophole that traffickers already know that is going on every single day in the United States. And there's also something called rehoming, which I don't know a whole lot about. Dr. DeGarmo started talking to me about it, and I was like, it's a little bit like, it's like drinking out of a fire hose, you know. But basically, I think all parents, if you have parental rights, you can also, without the government's consent, because, we all
It's your
believe in parental
child.
rights. I'm glad I have parental rights. Like I'm very glad I have parental rights. The government should not touch my children. I'm real serious about that. And most parents are like, government doesn't get to tell me like,
Mhm.
laws as long as I'm not like abusing my child. They should just have their hands off. I should be able to have the right to education and different things for my child. I should be able to make medical choices for my child. Like that's why we have parental laws. But you can also rehome a child. So for example, if one of my kids is having a lot of issues and it's not safe for my other kids, like I have the parental authority, I have the prudence to be able to go say, my child's now going to live with my parents for, a little while we get our family together. Like I have that right. I don't have to call a social worker for that. That's called rehoming. And traffickers are also using that. I don't really know how they're getting around that though, but I know
Oh,
that's
that
something.
makes sense. That
Yeah.
makes sense. Okay, one of the other things I've always wondered about when it comes to foster care and the system is how does aging out work? So a child has no mom, no dad, no family. They're living with this foster care family that, says the day you're turning 18, you're out. So does the government or do the states any that you're aware of help in any way, for that 18-year-old? I mean, what 18-year-old can pay for a home and a car and on their
Right.
own right now, especially with the economy like it is? But is there any support for a child that ages out, meaning they turn 18 and they're kicked to the curb by
Right.
the foster care home?
That is a complicated thing to answer. So I will say the reason the outcomes are so bad for children who age out is because most children who age out, who turn 18 and their check runs up and the foster parent is a crappy person and just sends them out, on their own because they didn't get their check or whatever, or for whatever reason, the statistics are really bad. Most likely they're going to become homeless because they literally by definition are, but I mean, really homeless. They might become addicts. They're more likely to become pregnant. All the outcomes are really, really bleak. So I would say that a lot of children fall into the cracks. However, there are amazing organizations all over the country that are working for this. It's just that how would the child know that? It's the same thing as like when you want to go to college, there's FAFSA, there's scholarships that every single child is eligible to apply for. I don't mean every scholarship they're eligible for. I just mean every child has scholarships that he or she could apply for. There's scholarships for like literally every reason under the sun. There's organizations that will, give you scholarships because you're born in July, like there's scholarships for anything. But if I'm a kid and I don't know that exists for me, how on earth am I supposed to get that?
That's right.
So there are organizations out there that do that work. And then the most current legislation, and I'm not fully up on whether it's passed. I know that it's started and it's been approved, and I don't know where it is in the full process. But this is the whole thing that Melania Trump is doing. It's called Fostering the Futures Act. So there's something in foster care called the Chafee. I think it's John H. Chafee or John. There's a thing called the Chafee law or grant. The Chafee, I don't know. It's like an organization, and previous laws have said that basically, I think it was like kids who are 16 if they're still in foster care at the age of 16, like maybe they're eligible to go to college and stuff like that. And
Okay.
Melania's bill lowered the standard to 14. So it's like, I think she extended it from 18 to 21 and lowered it from 16 to 18 to 14 to 21. So that is a program that's going to, its really focus is on youth who are aging out. And it's going to do all sorts of things. It makes children who are aging out of foster care, it makes them eligible to apply for Section 8 housing. It makes, if there's 14 and they're still in foster care at the age of 14, they can go to college for free, I believe. So that's what that whole law was doing. It's trying to kind of specifically address this major issue that's going on. And it also incentivizes businesses to hire teenagers out of foster care for interns and things like that to give them more opportunities. So, I think we're moving in the right direction on youth that are aging out, but it is a big problem.
Yeah. All right. There were a couple of things that I wanted to make sure that we got to today when we were with you. One of them is I want to talk about the book. Why write the book? You and Dr. John, why write the book together?
Dr. John, Dr. John is very persistent. He's an author of 11 or 12 books before me. And we became fast friends, and we went to Washington together to lobby because I found out about something called premature reunification, which, long story short, is just that children are being reunified at different speeds in the United States. And if a child is put back home full time with their parents too quickly, the ramifications are very bleak. Very bleak. That child's probably going to end up back in care. The parent is probably going to relapse if they got clean. There's all sorts of reasons why reunification that happens too quickly is not a good idea. So we went to petition Congress about that. We had bipartisan interest across the board. Everybody kind of unanimously was like, this is a great idea. We were going to see what would be the process to make a law. And while there is value in that, I met someone in Washington who was very, very high up, whose name and all information will remain confidential because I just so appreciated this person. But that person said, you can go about this a couple ways. You can make a law, but if you want, you need to be aware of something that we call in Washington Christmas treeing, which is when you write a bill, all of a sudden it can become 300 pages. We see this all the time. This is happening all the time in the United States. That's why there's so many bad laws. So you might be writing a pro-life bill, and on page 300, you don't realize that you're, passing something that has nothing to do with this, that has to do with like cutting down trees in Washington. And you're like, how did this get in my bill? It has nothing to do with my bill. And it just gets passed because people don't have time to read a 300-page bill. Yeah. So it becomes buried in there. And this person told me, they were like, you can pass laws. If that's what you want to spend your time, energy, effort in, like, you will die in Washington. Like, you will just die doing this. But you can, and you might like make some positive change. But I realized that's not really an interest of mine. I have 4 children. I have a whole bunch of careers. I'm an actress. I'm doing all sorts of other stuff. And so I've known from the get-go, my social worker, who my portion of the book's dedicated to, his name is Norman. And he used to make fun of me all the time because I would always be like, Norman, how many kids could I like legally foster? And he'd be like, I have news for you, Jen. Like, it's not going to be a number you want to hear, because I'm like, how many kids could I potentially rescue over time? And so I quickly realized that, to be fair to kids, especially, I had to recruit myself. I had to multiply myself. I had to recruit better foster parents into the game. And so Dr. DeGarmo asked me to co-author a book with him, and he had to persist for 2 years because I was like, why would you want to write a book with me? Like, you're a very prominent, established expert and author of your own merit. And I'm not an author. I'm a hot mess actress who, is pretty unfiltered and transparent about everything. And I just don't think that you want to write a book with me. And so he persisted. And our book is really fun because it has 2 totally different perspectives. I mean, I'm a woman, he's a man. He has a doctorate, and like, you can totally tell. And, I'm just me. He's very clinical and I'm very relatable. And so it ended up being this nice balance of sort of a Shakespearean balance of, you have drama and then you have Mercutio. Mercutio is like the comedic relief. So I'm like the comedic relief in a very tough subject, but it is a different side of me than people ever will see. It's very vulnerable and very raw. And it really addresses pretty much anything you would ever want to know about foster care. I can tell you just like the chapter topics are, just to be brief, like your first, the journey to becoming a foster parent. Like, what does that entail? Preparing your home and heart, measuring your expectations. Welcome home, understanding the unspoken emotions. That's all about how the fact is that these kids don't feel like they're being rescued most of the time. They might be removed from abuse and they don't think your home is like a godsend to them. They are very confused why they're there. And so you need to prepare for that. Like, it's not going to be all roses, it's tough.
I thought it was interesting, when I heard you talking about that a lot of the foster care children, when they hear the word adoption, it's not a good thing to them. It means more abuse. The other thing that I thought was very interesting that you talked about, which is so true, is that kids still love their parents,
Yeah.
even with it being abusive or whatever that situation may be. I was not in the foster care system, but I was abandoned by both my children at a young age. I mean, both of my parents at a young age. So I relate to some of the things that you mentioned. And that's one of them. You still love your parents, and it can be a very complicated situation. I think the age of the child matters, as well. And so there's trauma involved. There's going to be trauma no matter what.
Yeah.
Let's not even think about rape and neglect and all of that. Just the fact that they're not in their bed at home with their mom and or father, that in itself, they're in a new place. They're 6, 7, 8 years old. That's traumatic. And so all in itself. And I think a lot of people don't understand trauma, and they don't understand. I think a lot of people lack the understanding on many levels, whether it's emotionally or just like, well, they were an abusive mother. How could this child miss their mother? That was their mother. And
Right.
so I think there's just a lot that, if you haven't been through it, it might be hard for someone to really understand.
Right. And so that was a lot of my mission in writing the book, was helping prepare foster parents for their own emotional walk. How do you navigate? I call it being middle mom, where it's like, I don't really have rights over your child, but the state right now has made me your child's interim mom. And I'm trying to help you learn how to be a good mom. I'm also frustrated with like a lot of your bad decisions and, the trauma that I'm dealing with because of you. And at the same time, having compassion on them. Like it is really hard. It's hard for, I think, all parties involved.
Yeah.
But it's worth it. I mean, it's just, especially if you're a believer, I'm like, we're without excuse. Like we are without excuse. If we're a believer, like Jesus said, if you want to follow me, deny yourself. That's the first thing. Deny yourself. Take up your cross daily. He says daily, and follow me. Like we get to rest when we're in heaven. And even then we get a job, which I think is really fun. I'm always like, what am I going to do, Lord?
I think where my frustration, a lot of times has been in the last 7 years for me, has been a lot of my Christian friends, so-called Christian friends, that they're comfortable. They're comfortable. They don't want to talk about these things. They don't want to think about them. They like sitting in the not knowing, so they don't want to hear them because then they might have to do something about it. No. And so I think sometimes the worst is the church. And
100%. I mean, that's why I literally wrote another book that I didn't want to write. The Holy Spirit was like, you're writing this. Let me see. It's called Wake Up Your Faith. And that is specifically what it's about, is that I love the church because, I mean, the church is the body. And I know you're saying you do too. I'm with you. Yeah. I 100% know what you were saying, and I'm with you. What I'm saying is I recognize the church, the body of Christ. That's what I mean when I say the church.
Yes.
Is God's bride. This is Jesus's bride. This is like the bride he loves. And yet I think that many, 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 many American Christians, I do not think they're going to heaven. Now, I don't say that from a place of judgment. Like the Bible says not to judge. Like I don't know their circumstances. I do not know their heart. I cannot know all of the things that they are going through. But here is what I will say that keeps me on the straight and narrow. My favorite verses in the Bible are Matthew 7:22 through 23, which is when Jesus says, many will come to me in that day. This is the day they die. And they will say, Lord, Lord. So they call him Lord. They don't call him like, I don't know. They call him Lord, which means like, you're my Lord. Lord, Lord, did we not do many mighty works in your name? Did we not do miracles in your name? Did we not heal the sick in your name? Did we not cast out demons in your name? And he says, I will look at them and I will say, depart from me, you workers of lawlessness. You never knew me. You cannot say that these were not believers. You cannot say that these were not people that like did not understand the authority of Jesus. And it's my favorite verse because it keeps me on the straight and narrow, because it's like, it does not matter your resume, Jen. It does not matter how many people you laid hands on and in the name of Jesus, you saw them get healed. Do you have a relationship with the Lord? Did you deny yourself? Did you follow him daily? And, you know, there's all sorts of verses, First Thessalonians, like and I have no opinion on, you know, whether the rapture happens pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib. I don't care. What we know is that it says very clearly, like, one will go and one will be taken and one will be left behind, you know? And you look at the 5 wise virgins, all 10 virgins in that parable. And if nobody knows what I'm talking about and you're a believer, like, go look this up. There are 10 virgins. They're waiting for the bridegroom. This is a parable Jesus gave, and they have lamps and the bridegroom comes. The bridegroom is a metaphor for Jesus. He comes in the middle of the night when nobody expected it. And only five of the virgins had oil. So they could go and they all 10 were invited to the party. All 10 were believers. This is a parable about believers. Only 5 were ready. Only 5 had oil in their lamps. The other 5 foolish virgins, they said, give us your oil. And these 5 say, like, we can't. Go to the market and get it yourself. And if you look at it, just makes me like grieve. It grieves me that there are so many people that like they think because they've said a prayer that they're going to heaven and they're not. And I'm like, my core heart is evangelism. And I have felt so stirred in the last 3 years to like rebuke the church because I love them enough to be like, wake up. Like, you're not going to heaven. You're living the saddest life, trying to be a good person, but you don't know Jesus. You're not doing anything for him. You're a spiritual glutton. You're asleep. You're just lulled by prosperity gospel and these things that like Jesus never preached. That's a different Jesus. And the 5, and if you look at like Hebrews 12, it talks about, you know, discipline when it's happening is not comfortable, but it produces fruit. And it's the same thing. Like I wrote in the margins of Hebrew 12 in my Bible, like oil only comes through things that are crushed. And I think that these 5 wise virgins got crushed. They went through life, and life does a perfectly adequate job of crushing all of us. There are seasons in everybody's life. I don't care how well they think they've got it put together. There are seasons in life that are very hard. But how you walk through that trial, how you come out the other side is what refines you and gives you the oil in your lamp. And there are so many believers that are just, they want to do what's comfortable. And it's like, we were not called to a comfortable life.
That's right.
That's not the gospel. That's not Jesus.
That's right. That's right. And I think that we're spoiled. You know, we live in a time where, you know, I was listening to someone say the other day that the majority of Americans wouldn't make it a month without electricity because we're not used to no heat and no air conditioning, you know. I was thinking yesterday about a friend of mine when he turned 50, which was almost 10 years ago. He made a big deal about saying that he wanted his 50s to be a life or a decade of significance. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking yesterday about how I want my life, my 50s, I wanted it in the 40s, all of that. You know, I'm now 53, and I want my life to be about a life of obedience.
Yeah.
You know, the significance to me feels very self-focused, but obedience is very God-focused. Yeah. It is what you're talking about. It is the putting down the cross, you know, taking up the cross and go and following him. And it is about what he's calling you to do, the purpose that he has for you. And so it is doing the uncomfortable. It is doing the things that you're called to do and led to do. And I think that is what we're here for. You know, it's the life of obedience. There are a lot of things I'm doing right now that I wouldn't be doing if I hadn't been led by him to do a lot of things. My life is serving other people in a million different ways. And so, but it's a calling. And so that's the thing I was pondering yesterday. And it's really beautiful, Jen, if you really think about it. Like, it's really beautiful if you think about your life as
Yes.
being a life of obedience.
Yes.
That's what we're called to. He says, obedience is greater than
Better than
sacrifice.
sacrifice.
And so
Yeah.
he's not asking for your child. He's not asking for your home or your
Yeah.
car. He's asking. Hope Beryl Green, who was born into the Illuminati, she has this part in her book, and I've had her on the show a few times, and
Ugh.
we talk about this, and she says, I asked God, and she's so like, this just got me, and we've talked, she and I've, talked about it so many times, but it's so good. She said, she was 30 before she was saved out of the Illuminati. And she said, she was praying to him one day, and now she's in her 50s. And so this was over 20 years ago. And she said, God, why did it take so long?
Yeah.
Why 30 years? Why did it take, why 30 years? And he said, I asked many. He asked many, and they wouldn't get up. They wouldn't get involved. They looked the other way. They thought someone else would do it, whatever, And so, but that is the example of the life of obedience. If we would just be obedient, I've had people who have said to me, which I've never in a million years had thought of or heard of such a thing. But as I really was walking out my own God-given calling, I started experiencing people thanking me for walking in my purposes and giftings and callings and things that he's asking me to do, because they were impacting and enabling other people to do the things he was calling them to do.
Yeah.
And so, how do you know that foster child that, that needs a home that you adopt, not you specifically, but anybody watching, how do you know that doesn't start a whole domino effect? You were talking about generational curses, where there are parents that were in the foster care system, and now their children are in the foster care system. And I thought that was so interesting, because it can be a generational thing, and people just don't know any different.
It's almost always generational. I mean, foster care it's like, if you really are awake, if you're a Christian, if you're a believer, like, you start to realize very quickly how real Ephesians 6 is. Like, we are in a spiritual battle. And here's what's really cool. If you're a believer, going back to like everything we've been saying, it's like God didn't promise us a life of comfort, but he did promise that he would be with us. And I'm like, listen, I want to be like Moses. You know what I mean? Like, Moses lived during the plagues, but like, they didn't touch him. But like, that doesn't mean that he wasn't fearful, or like Joshua or Caleb, like they saw. But their perspective was different than the other spies, because they were like, are you kidding me? Like, the Lord is with us. Be bold and courageous. It doesn't mean that they weren't fearful. It doesn't mean that they didn't have, like, they didn't see that they were like as grasshoppers. They saw the Lord. They saw the Lord when they went and spied, and guys, again, I know I'm talking Christianese, but like, if you know the Bible, you know the Bible. But like, Ephesians 2 is so amazing, because it says we're united with Christ. We're seated in heavenly places. And I'm like, listen, Christian foster parents, like, you can break things in the spirit world through prayer.
Yeah.
That like nobody is breaking if they're not a believer. Like, I prayed prayers, like I could tell you warring prayers where like things broke over my kids, like immediate, like I am not having this, like lawsuit stuff, it's like, I might not have rights as a foster parent, but in my prayer closet, like I am bringing that to the Father. And like, I'm not having this, like not on my watch. I will pray the mama prayers over like my kids. I don't care if they're a foster child or my biological child, like they or adopted child, like I'm going to pray. I'm going to the courts of heaven for them, and when you have that perspective, it's actually really exciting. It's like being a Christian is actually the most exciting thing in the world. We'll go through trials, but man, God is with us. It's amazing.
That's great. Okay, so I want to read a few comments from the audience, comments and questions. So Simply Sylvia says, yes, love her in movies. I was thinking I hadn't heard of you before and you didn't look familiar, but today, the more I looked at you, I'm like, I think I have seen a couple of Hallmark movies with you in them. So, okay. No, I just, okay. CTD53 says, love Jen Lilley. DD70 says, I've loved her movies, and she's such a wonderful Christian role model. She talks the talk and walks the walk. God's leading her. It's beautiful. Christ Believer says, We were a foster care home. I adopted the last 3. That's so
Wow.
great. I have a friend who,
Amazing.
her youngest brother was adopted. She had 5. There were five of the, my friend is the oldest of the 5 children, and then the youngest was an adopted son. But I remember growing up, she always had a new foster baby in the house.
That's amazing.
Grammy says, I have always wanted to foster. I'm going to purchase this book. We put the link to the book and where to purchase it in today's show description on Rumble. So if you go to the Michelle Moore Show Rumble channel for today's show, you'll see where to be able to purchase it. And
It's on
also,
Amazon.
so and I think that's probably where producer Ron put it. But then also Jen Lilley's social media links are on there for you as well. So that way you got all of it in one place. Taco Ride says, trust and obey, for there's no other way. I love it. That's so good. Okay. So one of the things we said about today's show, Jen, was that conquering the ongoing challenges within the United States foster care system. I think you just said one of the ways that we conquer it, which is through prayer. I think it's also through obedience. But would you share with us a couple of other ways that you see that we could collectively come together, believer or not, which I believe that most of my viewers are believers, but, and I'm certainly a spirit-led believer and follower of Christ. So, so Jen, what are some ways we conquer?
First of all, like you said, getting involved. And we have a whole chapter, like the whole end of the book, the whole entire last chapter is about like, how do you get involved in foster care if you can't foster yourself? That looks like a lot of things. So if you're a believer and you go to a church, there's something called Care Portal. Care Portal is awesome. It's like the Craigslist of foster care. So it's basically the church stepping in to the story before the government, because once the government steps in, the government makes a very bad parent. I think they're doing their best, but like it's a very broken system. There are many times in foster care where the child, and I don't want to oversimplify this, but like a child can get taken into care because a single mom doesn't have a pantry that's full or doesn't have, bedding for their child. They don't have a mattress. It's like, okay, well then why doesn't the church step in and fill her pantry or like babysit the kid or, get them a mattress?
Right.
Like it's not that hard. So there's something called Care Portal. They address that. That's really easy. Get your church, bring it up to your pastor or your leaders in your church. Like, hey, how do we get signed up for Care Portal? I think it's free. It's just a little bit of a, sign up process. So Care Portal is awesome. They can become a CASA, which is a court appointed special advocate. If they're like, hey, I would love to foster, but I really can't. If they have the capacity, they can do what I'm about to do. In the fall, I'm going to get relicensed to be a respite parent. So respite is just that, like if a child needs an emergency placement and they just need a placement that's not a shelter. They put these kids like in homeless shelters, and in 13 states right now, the kids are being put in detention homes as criminals, even without a criminal record. If you can be a house that's like, hey, I can't take this child long term, but sure, I'll give you 3 days or I'll give you a week while you make the calls and find a placement for them so they don't have to be traumatized and go to, a detention home or a shelter. I can't even, you can do that. Or if a foster parent, like there's a death in the family and they can't get it a court approved to take the kid with them, they go into respite. So like that's a temporary home. It's the same process as foster care licensing. And then the good news is if you later decide that you do want to foster or you take care of a child and you realize that you're in one of those foster homes it's really abusive and you're like, hey, I'm not sending them back. Like they should not be sent back to this crappy place. You're already licensed. Like that child can just stay with you. That's oversimplifying it. It's like, don't get on me, guys. If you're like, well, I had a circumstance where that, I'm just saying broad strokes. That's true.
That's right. That's right. That's so good.
Are a mechanic, give a child in foster care or a foster parent or single moms like, hey, I'm doing free oil changes, like 1 day a month. If you're a single mom or if your child is in the welfare system, I'll do free oil changes this month. Or, if you're a hairdresser, like give the child in foster care a haircut. Like they maybe have never had one. If you own a restaurant, like maybe do once a month, like if that child's in foster care, we don't have to announce it, but like they get a free meal. Like, like there's other practical ways to get involved. And I would just say like awareness. And if you know another foster parent, man, ask them what they need. If you know a single mom, ask her what she needs. I'm not saying like don't support single dads. I just don't know a lot about that. But I think that single moms are kind of the modern day equivalent of a widow.
Yes. Yeah.
Like
Sure,
give
that's a
them
great point.
diapers or just tell them, like even like a $5 gift card to Starbucks. It's like, it's not the amount. It's just that like a lot of people just need to be seen. They just need to feel like, oh, somebody notices that like I'm doing something and I'm really tired, like it makes a difference. So
Yeah,
don't underestimate,
yeah.
you don't have to give a lot, but like even just letting someone know that you see them, it goes a long way.
We had some friends, I guess it was about 2 years ago, and they had 4 kids already, and then they adopted, and or they were foster parents. Now they didn't adopt the child got to go back to the mom, and so that was the whole thing. But when they took over caring for the child, we showed up, my husband and myself and my sons, we all showed up with a car full of stuff. It was a
That's
little girl,
amazing.
and so yeah, diapers, the whole thing. I mean, I was like, we're going to Target and, and getting
Yeah.
some outfits and all of that kind of stuff. But you're right. And they just couldn't believe that we showed up, unannounced with diapers and outfits. And it was right at
Yeah.
summertime. So swimsuits, the whole thing for the baby. But anyways, and because it was a big deal, they were fostering a child. I felt like it was a big deal. And yes, I think you're right. Any way that you can help. They're not a wealthy family. Like I said, he already had 4 kids. So we showed up to help. But I think that's what you gotta, sometimes I think it goes back to what you were saying too about, I think so many times we think someone else will take care of it, or we don't stop and think what they might need right now in this situation. And so it's important that we kind of just really notice what's around us a lot of times. I
Get
think
off
that's
your
where we
phone
fail.
and open your
Yeah.
eyes. What was the woman who you said was in the Illuminati? Because I was like wrecked by it when the Lord said, I
Yeah.
called many. I was like, I need to read this. Like, I was like,
Yeah.
get it together.
She just came out with her second book too. It's Hope. And then her last name is hyphenated. It's Beryl, Beyr, which comes from the Bible. And she talks about that in the book. And then her last name is Green, like the color green. So
Okay.
she's been on the show a few times. She and I are actually friends. But they killed her birth mother during her birth. And
Yeah, I
then
don't
she
doubt
was
it.
actually, they planned for her to help to take down the church. But what's so wonderful about her story was it was a pastor and the pastor's wife that actually came to help
Oh.
her, got her a car and all of that.
That's really
So,
interesting. No, it reminds me of a different story, but it's not the same story.
okay.
Can I just say for all the believers to be so encouraged, like the devil, I don't know why. I feel like in Western culture, maybe because of cartoons that we grew up with, like the devil is not the equal counterfeit of God. He is a
Mhm.
created being. It says that mankind is just a little lower than the angels. He was an angel that was created. Like the devil cannot thwart God's plans. It's so ridiculous. It's like we do not have to be fearful as Christians. We need to be spiritually awake and know our authority, like know we're seated with Christ. Like I
Yeah.
do not fear witches. I'm sure there are whole covens that like daily pray against me, and I feel it. Like there are moments where my children, I'm like, has Satan entered you? But like literally, I'm like a freak. I go get like communion. I go get like matzah and grape juice. I'm like, everybody take some. Like we're taking communion. The
I
witches are
think,
working hard today.
I met a lady one time on an elevator, and it was downtown Nashville, and she said something about, I was there for a book signing, and she said, "What's your book about?" And I told her, and she literally threw herself against the wall of the elevator. She could not get further away from me. And so because it was a faith-based, yeah. And so it was so funny because I think it might be just the opposite. It might be that the witches and the warlocks are afraid of us.
Oh, they're so
because they
afraid of us. They're afraid
understand.
of believers who are awake. They're not afraid of
Yes.
people who go to church. They are
Yeah.
very afraid of believers who are awake, which is why it takes so many of them to like form a pact to curse us.
Yeah.
And I'm like, listen,
Yeah.
my Bible says every curse my Lord will turn into a blessing, and I could use a blessing. So take a breath and go again. You know what I mean? Like I'm not.
Okay, so I was reading John Ramirez's book. This is so good. I was just talking about this with one of my girls that works for me the other day. Listen to this, Jen. This is so good. So John Ramirez says he was baptized twice in his life. Now he's a believer, but he was also baptized at 8 into the Satanic Church at 8. Okay, so listen to this. In his book, he's talking about how there was a church and they were having this event, and it was outside. And he said that in the book, he writes about how they were out there trying to do all this witchcraft and stuff against the church and the event and all that. And he said, literally, there was a dome of protection over the church, the people, the land, all of it, because they were so prayed up. And I talk about an intentional, systematic dumbing down of the body of Christ. So it's like everybody knows. And by the way, I love the book of Matthew. It's one of my favorites. And so
good.
But it is. Matthew's really good. But one of the things that I think so many believers, I was just saying this the other day to my girl that we were talking about the Bible and that book. She ordered that book and we're supposed to be talking about it after she reads it. But what's going on is that I believe the believers don't understand the things of the Spirit, where that is what all of their focus is in witchcraft and wizardry and all that stuff. They understand the things of the Spirit. Even Hope said as a little girl, now this is how sick what they did. Now she was on Epstein Island and all this, but she said even as a little girl, she remembers her earliest memories. Some of them at 4 and 5 years old would be that while one man is raping her, another one is dressed as Jesus and they're reading scriptures over her.
This is a common thing with the Illuminati, with the Masons, Satanists. This is a common thing. Yeah.
They try, and she was, raised up in all of that. And so, because their plan for her was to help take down the church. And so the programming, all of that. But anyways, but she is such a great godly woman, and she gives God the glory, and she's fighting, and she's doing such a great job. But Jen, thank you so much for your passion. I always talk about, I think we should be a lot more mad, and we should be much more passionate than I think. And I tell people, get off the fluoride. I think it's the fluoride. It makes people docile. But anyway, so thanks for being here. Thank you so much. And we appreciate you, and you keep up the good fight and let us know how we can help. I want to remind everybody also, Jen and Dr. John have Called to Foster, the book, and don't forget to get your copy and see what you can do. There's a whole chapter toward the end about all different kinds of ideas and ways that you can pitch in as well. I know that look, if we can raise $255,000 for Hurricane Helene here on our little show, I know that we can also do something big for children that need some help in the foster care system. So I highly recommend that you get the book and you get to work and think about what you can do. It may not, I know that's what I loved about my big takeaway from Jen. There were a lot of takeaways today, but one of the takeaways was that you don't have to foster a child. If you're not able to do that, you can still make a difference in big ways, even if it's a $10 gift card to a coffee shop. The turnover is so massive when it comes to these workers that are trying to take care. The caseload is so overwhelming. The turnover is massive. She says 12 to 18 months. It's crazy for these social care workers. I can only imagine the workload, the trauma that they themselves experience. And so just encourage, if you've got somebody that that's a social care worker, you got somebody that's a foster parent, please encourage them and see how, maybe you can pitch in and babysit one night or something. All right. We hope that you enjoyed today's show. Don't forget about the next 2 days of educational and documentary videos. And we're going to be back on Friday with Tom Olstead and Jack and Margie Flynn. We're going to be talking about what happened to Tom and how Jack and Margie helped. It's going to be so good, y'all. All right. I hope that you enjoyed today's show, and we'll be back here next time on the Michelle Moore Show.
Ever read the ingredients on your everyday products and think, wait, is this shampoo or a science experiment? If your lotion needs a translator, a lab coat, and a warning label, it might be time for a change. Godly Granny products are made with purpose, love, and ingredients you can actually recognize. No mystery chemicals, no toxins, just clean, simple goodness. The way Granny would have wanted, because your skincare shouldn't require a chemistry degree. From shampoo, lotion, skincare, and all natural health remedies, Godly Granny has everything your family needs. It's no wonder we have over 1,200 5-star reviews from our amazing customers to prove it. Join the families just like yours who've switched to Godly Granny. Visit godlygranny.com and sign up for our emails to receive a special discount code for 10% off your first order, plus exclusive updates and information on newly released products.
Universal Coin and Bullion is my partner for gold, silver, rare coins, and precious metal IRAs. For over 30 years, they've helped more than 500,000 customers and completed over $2.6 billion in precious metals transactions. They're offering callers 2 1-ounce American Silver Eagles and a 1/10 ounce American Gold Eagle at actual dealer cost. Call Universal Coin and Bullion today.
Hi, I'm Linda Bamber Olson, the inventor of the Wave Watch, the world's first frequency therapy watch. It features over 1,100 targeted frequencies combined into 150 playlists for ease of use. These sounds are acoustical and they move through your body, through your skin and your bones. You don't necessarily have to hear it. As each frequency goes through, it can be realigning, revitalizing, reconnecting, and even rebalancing your body all the way to the cellular level. So that's why we have so many testimonies for aches, ADD and ADHD, allergies, colds and flu, dental, emotions, headaches, joints, kidney stones, nerves, organs, skin health, swelling, tremors, vagus nerve, and so many more. Use this code for $100 off when you purchase the Wave Watch. Thanks for learning about frequencies, using them, and supporting the Wave Watch.
For Michelle's social media links, go to michellemooreshow.com.